So it's mid-December 2019. Um, just thought I might do a little bit of a journal. Just what I've been thinking about and life. So right now, I've been watching sort of some of the American elections, which is, I don't know, a strange thing to do as far as I'm concerned. But I find myself doing it. Thinking about what the implications of, the next few American presidents on the rest of the world. I'm not sure, if Americans are sort of aware, but it seems like obvious that, the whole world ends up sort of getting ruled by the United States, which is fine. I mean, it's better than other possibilities as far as I can tell. For me, I don't know that that's true for the whole world, but for me, what the United States does is they're a good neighbor for us. And I want the best for the United States. And so as I'm watching the election coverage, the questions I'm asking myself is what's going to produce the most stable United States, and how are they going to get to something that generally promotes a healthy world, right? It seems from the outside, which, who knows? It seems like some sort of like special interests have kind of taken over the country, and view anyone outside of the established apparatus as some sort of threat. But if they specifically come after the apparatus, they really ratchet up their defense systems. And it seems like Donald Trump is doing that in his own way. Like, I'm not saying he's not doing lots of bad stuff. I don't know, what I think there. But people like Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang or, those type of people who seem to be trying to make substantial changes that's actually going to affect the day-to-day lives of the apparatus, or the establishment, or I don't know who these people are that are under control and who's controlling and stuff like that. But it seems like some people are wanting to make some sort of stand against what's happening there. And so for me, like when I'm looking at those candidates who at least are saying that they want to be run by people and not necessarily corporations and special interests, those are the ones that I would want, the United States to choose from. You're not going to be able to accomplish everything in an election. Like there's a lot of people with like big stories and options, and I don't think it's realistic to imagine that they can make sweeping changes. I know Bernie Sanders certainly would love to make sweeping changes, which seems to terrify a number of people in the United States, and slightly weird from a Canadian perspective, because some of the differences, the things that he's wanting to do, are things that we are pretty accepting of. They aren't even really political for us. That's just the way that life is. Yeah, you don't really. If you get sick, you just go to the doctor. You don't think about money. It's not. The doctor gets paid, and they can go move wherever they want to go, and it's just a business for them. Like in small towns, the way the business typically works in my little town would be you might have a medical center, and there might be one sort of entrepreneuring type person that's involved there, and then they'll maybe bring in some other doctors or supporting staff, and they run a local business, and it's one of the most important businesses in my little town. And they're successful, but when I go there, I don't think about paying money. Like not to say there are little weird fees, but they're like, if you need a note for someone else, say you need it for your work, well, they think of that as like a businessy type transaction, and you have to pay for that. And whatever, I don't have strong feelings about it. I haven't really thought about it. I don't know. Sometimes if you call an ambulance and it's like a wasteful call and you're just being disrespectful, then you have to pay for that. But it's not really, doesn't come into your mind as part of the equation. Money, you just don't think about it. The doctors, they have good jobs. It's one of the most, it's what most people, dream of for your kids. It's one of the few. It's not, so it's not like it's, I think sometimes in the States, the idea of socialism is so scary to you, and you connect this to socialism, that you can't see that it's just normal. It's just it's a part of life that you don't particularly think about, because you don't worry about financial ruin. Certainly, like, because we sort of have some social programs which aren't great, but like, I don't think, I don't know, feel well equipped to answer this. I feel like I'm wrong in a lot of cases, but I sort of gather that the idea of like going bankrupt because you have a medical emergency is like real in the States, or really putting someone in a real financial ruin. And that's just not a reality that I think we necessarily need to live in this day and age. Like, I don't know. So then I was also thinking about, so you have a weird situation when it comes to immigration, at least compared to what we think of, right? So, and I'm not actually, I don't know that I'm representative of what percentage of people I'm representative, if this is truly representative of Canadians, but it's what I imagine, and it's what I hope for and believe and have experienced. But I'm small town, and I think immigration is amazing. I think it should be the best thing, this source of new ideas and students and excitement and businesses, and I just think it should be an awesome thing. And I think a lot of Canadians would view that, and that should be kind of the goal. Because if someone comes in and they're immigrating to your country, you want the best possible future for them, because that's also the best possible future for Canada, right? Or for your country. And so what you want is, like, I think it's a whole series of levers, and you kind of like have to configure a mathematical equation to say what kind of experience do I want to see for the immigrants, for the people coming to my country, because I want that to be good, because they're my future, brothers and sisters in this country. And so I think that we have started to kind of mistakenly think that it has to be either like you have to be pro-immigration or against immigration. Like, immigration should be good, but the reason people think they have to be against it is because the dials are set wrong. The controls are set wrong. So in the United States, you guys have, like, having all these people come in illegally and not be given citizenship it feels racist. It ends up, you have to, no matter, like, right away, you can't have an underclass. That has to end right away. You make them citizens, you make a path to citizenship. You can't have people coming across the border that don't have official status, because you can't do that to people. You can't have a system that just does that to people. You can't live with that. So you got to just fix it. It can't be left, it can't be right, it just has to be fixed. You get some mathematicians and you figure out what's going to make the best life for these immigrants. What number can we sustain? How can we configure this? But the goal has to be to give them the best life possible. And if there's only so many that can come in and you can give them something of true, positive, lasting value, then maybe it's better to just, if the number needs to go lower, then it goes lower. But, it could be the case that you could take certainly way more than you're taking right now, legally at least. And maybe that's who knows how that number compares, but it'd have to be a mathematical equation. You're trying to maximize, give them the best experience, which gives your country the best experience. It's a unique situation. I think it's important that you see that you're in a weird spot, and it is likely not good for stability of the country, and you just need to get that part figured out. I don't think it's a left or right issue. It's just loving people, coming up with the best solution, and or as close as you can get as quickly as possible, and keep moving towards it. Like, obviously, this is loaded, and it's got all kinds of baggage, and people have different perspectives, and there's history and stuff. Like, so you got your situation there. That's tough. But I think it's really important to just buckle down and make sure you don't have two classes of people, like citizen, non-citizen. That's not good. Like, it's not even something that I think that most other countries can even fathom. Like, I don't know. Like, there's probably people here who aren't citizens, but like, I've never met one. I don't think I've ever met one that I've never met someone who's met one. Like, there are people who come here and work from the Caribbean and maybe mess up their paperwork for a little bit, or that kind of thing. But it's not. I don't know. It's not out of control, right? You want to have this thing should be a good thing. This is a way to bring people in from tough situations to give people opportunity and mutually benefit from the growth of our country. And I just think that that's how it has to be viewed, not as some sort of like fighting point. You got to get the people who are being marginalized out of that situation. Like, it's just a structural problem. I don't know. Did I have one more? Oh, okay. So the last thing I was kind of randomly just thinking about today is the change. Like, so small town, the changing of small towns. A lot of downtowns, at least here, are sort of, it's getting more and more difficult to run a business, like a small business. And it's really big corporate franchises that maybe can actually make some money here. And that's tough. In our nearby town, and you hear these Yang, for instance, he talks about how 30% of the malls and retail stores will probably be closing because of automation, because of Amazon. And I just wanted to reflect that from my own sort of experience, how tough it is to have a small business, not me, but family. And I think it would be really good for the society as a whole to find a way to replace in some way. I don't know how it looks, but we need to replace some of these sort of footings of our community, not just employment wise, but also kind of with our social structure. And we want to revitalize communities by making them places that a person can actually be an entrepreneur and make a living wage. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if our shopkeepers and little small businesses could make a living wage? Like, anything that relies on shipping or can get there within a day is vulnerable to automation and to Amazon. And that's tough, Like, I don't mean to vilify Amazon. I think they're, I love Amazon for what I love Amazon for. And it's progress. It's just happening, and it's not something to be vilified. But we have to obviously find a way to extract back from them what they're taking from the global economy, or from us, from our situation. And not in a kind of a vilifying way, but just I think that they could be fine with it. I think that they would want to keep this position as this growing mega corporation, and I think they would do what was necessary. Like, they're going to rule the world along with Google and Facebook and stuff, and I think that they would, in order to keep that position, they would be willing to give back what's appropriate to give back, to make sure that our small communities and large communities are thriving. So Andrew Yang, he advocates a VAT, he calls it. But so we have had what they called GST, which I think is basically the same thing. General service tax, goods and service tax. But I think it's basically a VAT, and I don't know, you just pay it. It's weird because he kind of presents it like it would be a tax on the corporations, but the way it's presented to us, it feels like a tax that we pay. And I can't get my brain around what I think about that, but I don't know if this makes any sense, but I'll just say it anyways because it's just a journal. I think that it should be presented to people and to corporations as a tax on their transactions or a tax on the money that they're making, taking a cut of that. But I don't think that they should be able to reframe it as a tax that we pay, because I think it's something that we can frame, because they don't have to charge exactly that tax. They don't. They have to pay the tax, but they don't have to charge that tax. They can charge nothing. They can charge 20%. This is a free market, and we're taxing them, and it's not necessarily we're a direct tax on the people. And I think that would make it these types of things more favorable, and I think that's scary to corporations, because once you start on that road, then it's a percent here, it's a percent there a lot of times. Or they're certainly going to be fighting against that happening. And here in Canada, it was initially higher, and then corporations and stuff, they managed to convince somebody to change it. I mean, whatever. I'm assuming that because I don't actually know. I mean, I have no idea, but that's just my bias. Sorry. I don't know how to make up for that. Anyways, so the idea that Andrew Yang has, I find quite fascinating. I think that it's important to have some sort of benefit for people that doesn't stigmatize people. I really think it's important that they're not stigmatized. And I think, so I worked for social services at one point, just briefly, and people who end up on Ontario Works here, there's a stigma, right? And they have people helping them to get jobs, which is great, and they have to prove that they're trying to get jobs or do education, which is great, but it's tough. It's not enough money, and there's stigma there, and sometimes people are suffering from a temporary mental illness, and they got someone saying maybe it's an anxiety attack and their medication's out of whack, and they got someone saying, oh, you have to, get this together. You gotta, in order to keep getting your money, you need to be doing these interviews or whatever they want you to do, right? Which is great. I mean, it needs to be that way, but maybe it needs to be that way. I want to take that back. I don't know that it needs to be that way. The idea of this freedom dividend, I just love the idea of taking the stigma away. You're a normal person who's not forced to hide from the system or pretend you're disabled, or not to say that people are doing that, but sometimes they feel like they have to, or they would feel like they needed to. And that's just a little scary. It's not good for people. It's better that they just have enough, that their survival's guaranteed from my perspective, and that that money goes into a local economy, and then they get a job. It gives them opportunity to do different things. I know that you don't want to create a culture of dependency on some sort of local government office. I just don't think that that's at all good. I think that it would be so much better to just make sure everyone's okay, and to just try to create the best world that you can.